Russian law enforcement officials beating protesters, and Jesse Ventura beating it for Mexico. Roscoe Bartlett, former congressman, headed for the hills, and Noah headed to a theater near you. This is the voice of resistance.
Standing for truth in the four corners of America. Fighting for justice on the frontiers of the culture wars. And turning resistance into an art form. Randall Terry.
Well, I guess it was inevitable that some bad press would come the way of the Russian government during the Olympic Sochi Games, and we've got some footage to show you. Cossacks are what they are called. These are people that are in law enforcement. They're not exactly police, they're not exactly military, but they work with police and work in law enforcement, originally to protect the borders of Russia, but also to help police make arrests. Well, they helped with a little bit more than that. As you can see, they're actually flogging female protesters from a rock and roll Russian band called P Riot. And this group has made headlines because they interrupted a church service and sang some pretty vulgar lyrics, an impromptu concert they called it. And they sang some pretty vulgar lyrics about President Putin. They were arrested for disrupting the service. They were sentenced to 2 years in jail. That sentence was reduced, I think, to a couple months, and they were released. And they have gone back to protesting. And their protests got them beaten. They were arrested, or detained rather, and then released. Evidently some items were missing from a local hotel, and there was the possibility that they were involved with theft of these items. It turns out that they weren't. But they were protesting, and they were rewarded for their expression of speech with a flogging. It makes me really glad to live in America, where we can have freedom of speech, freedom of association, where we can protest without the fear of police roughing us up, where we don't have our persons or our things seized without a proper warrant, where we're not spied on. No, wait a minute. When I was leading Operation Rescue, we had police brutalize people. I mean, literally broke limbs. One time I was detained, or ultimately arrested by the police. They came, carried me out of a crowd of people where we were peacefully protesting, put me face down in a puddle, including horse urine, bent my fingers as far back as my wrist. I thought they were going to break the bones. Just tormenting people, putting knuckles underneath ears. It's happened here in America. Carried by handcuffs, excruciating. But beyond that, we're watching our own government spy on us. Keep all of our emails, keep all of our texts, log all of our phone calls. In some ways, we can look at what the Russian Cossacks did to these people and be disturbed, maybe even appalled that peaceful protesters are being treated like this. It really is appalling. But when you look at what our own government is doing to us, it is perhaps far more insidious, because the dragnet is literally after all of us. And it's being done without public beatings. It's being done while we sleep. It's being done while we are numbed from our bread and our circuses. Clapper, the head of, if my memory is correct, the head of the NSA, he's the one who lied under oath to the Senate, where he said that the government was not collecting phone data when Senator Wyden asked him that. And there have been people who have been saying he should be charged with perjury. Well, Dennis Clapper had this to say. He said, he did an interview with the Daily Beast, and he said, "I don't think it would be any greater concern to most Americans than fingerprints." He's trying to justify what the government did without telling us, okay? Literally, most members of Congress didn't even know that the government was spying on all Americans. So Clapper said, I don't think it would have be any great concern to most Americans than fingerprints. Well, people kind of accept that because they know about it. But had we been transparent about it and say, here's one more thing we have to do as citizens for the common good, just like we have to go to airports 2 hours early and take our shoes off, all the other things we do for the common good, well, this is one more thing. Mr. Clapper, I disagree. We go through airport security because we're going to get in a flying tube and people have taken bombs on planes before, right? I get that. And the intrusion of these searches and how demeaning they are, that is still hotly debated, and I would side with civil libertarians. But it's one thing where you have a group of people in a potential flying bomb, all right? It's something completely different when you are spying on every American who has done nothing wrong, who is not connected to any criminal activity, and then you say it's for the common good? No. This is about Big Brother. This is about oppressive government. I'm going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to look at two former officials and look at their reaction. One a congressman, one a former congressman, one a former governor. What do they know that we don't know? That they're going off the grid.
You have two choices. I mean, you can try to raise your children by design, or you will raise them by default. There are no perfect parents. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. If we have a plan, we've got a better chance of getting it right in the long run.
There is something deep within the heart of every human being that longs for parental acceptance and approval. When does a boy become a man?
Get a group of guys around and ask them that question.
I don't think there's a certain age. Some men stay boys their whole life.
I would say, 16, 18 years old.
Wow, that's a good question.
When they get bar mitzvah.
Well, I think when he has a child. So I just became at 56, 56 years old.
Without the power of the Holy Spirit changing us and giving us power over our sin, we can't hope to be the dads that our kids need us to be.
The Department of Homeland Security has put out to bid the ability to track the license plate of every vehicle in America. I repeat, the Department of Homeland Security is saying that it wants to be able to follow the movements of every vehicle in America. It's not enough for them that they're tracking our phones, our texts, our emails. They want to know where we are. Now, they're saying, of course, it's so that they can find and arrest illegal, fugitive immigrants, okay? Isn't that clever? This is just so that we know where the illegals are, the fugitives. Excuse me, all you have to do is go to the border of Texas and Arizona. There are millions of them there. Don't lie to us. Don't insult our intelligence and say this is about fugitive illegal immigrants. This is about the government wanting to know where everyone is so that at whatever point the people in power deem it necessary, they can do with us what they want. Let me tell you a quick story. There's a book called The Town That Started the Civil War. I heartily encourage you to read it. And you can always go online or to a local bookstore and thumb through a book, all right? You have that ability to see if it's something that you want to read. The premise of the book is that Oberlin, Ohio, where there was a college that was filled with abolitionists, that they instigated the start of the Civil War. It's an interesting premise, and it's a worthwhile read. There's a story there. about a federal marshal who came to find a fugitive slave that was hiding in Oberlin. The federal marshal got off a train and expressed his intentions, what he was there for. Inside of 10 or 15 minutes, some 40 or 50 men from the town arrived with their guns. And they surrounded the federal marshal. And they explained to him two very simple things. One, he was not going to take this man back to slavery. And two, he was going to get on the next train south and leave. Goodbye. Now, in those days, they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have cruisers. They didn't have helicopters. He was a federal marshal with a pistol, and he was surrounded by dozens of armed men who were prepared to take his life, or at least to detain him, without letting him be the long arm of the law and just enforce the law and take this free man back to slavery. Everything has changed, folks. Speed of communication, speed of travel, armaments, the type of bullets, guns, missiles, rockets, planes, all of these things, drones. The equation has completely changed. Now, we know that the Second Amendment, our right to keep and bear arms, was put in the Bill of Rights specifically so that we could defend ourselves against a government that goes out of control. But at this point, our big brother government has the upper hand on us by virtue of its spying capability, its speed, its communication, its mobility. The stage is set for us to live under the heel of an oppressive government. Now, former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura and former U.S. Congressman Roscoe Bartlett, both of them who served in government, whatever you think about their politics, okay? Both of them have been sounding the alarm that we are in danger. Jesse Ventura about Big Brother, Roscoe Bartlett, perhaps an EMP attack, an electromagnetic pulse. Roscoe Bartlett is an opponent of Big Brother government, very libertarian, pro-life. Both of them, they're not schleppers. They're not fools. They were elected. Jesse Ventura, they call him a crackpot. Well, he was smart enough, and he was a good enough leader and charismatic enough to be elected twice as an independent. Roscoe Bartlett was mocked when he was a House member, Republican. They called him a crackpot, but he was smart enough to serve for 20 years. Both of these men are saying that we are in danger, and they're both living it out. They've both literally moved out, away from the city, and gone off the grid. Roscoe Bartlett has 140 acres in West Virginia with 6 log cabins with solar power, for goodness sake. He's 87 years old, and he still is putting in 10 and 12-hour days just working the land. What do these men know that we don't know? Or what are they saying that we're not hearing? When the government is seeking the ability to trace our movements with our license plates, we need to step back and say, the republic is dying and we are in danger. This is the voice of resistance, even if it's a fading voice. Do you want to have knowledge, wisdom, discernment? If so, you have to read good books on theology, history, books that look at the lives of great men and women. So to help you to become a more effective Christian, a better witness for truth, somebody who can engage in productive conversation that exhorts and edifies those that you speak with, we're going to do something crazy. We're offering you these 7 books for a gift of any size. You just pay for the shipping and handling, and then give whatever gift that you can, and we will send them to you. But just to make it a little bit more crazy, I will send you a second copy of my 3 books, autographed. You can give them as a gift to your pastor or to a family member and help extend truth and justice in the world. This is While Supplies Last. A quick follow-up note about Jesse Ventura and Roscoe Bartlett. According to the press reports that we've been able to find, Jesse Ventura's being off the grid is in a home in Mexico. And he has said that he's there, wants to stay away from U.S. drones. All right, so he's outside of the country, living off the grid in that way, doing a TV show, if my memory is correct, called Off the Grid. So his preoccupation is to have a private life that is outside of the scrutiny of our government. Roscoe Bartlett, on the other hand, who served in the U.S. House, he is on a 140-acre compound, if you will, in the dense woods of West Virginia, about 4 hours outside of Washington, D.C., because he wants to be able to stay clear of chaos, all right? I mean, the simple fact of the matter is, if the government wants to harm somebody who's in another country, they've already shown that they can and will do it, all right? Certainly it'd be a lot more difficult. They're not going to harass Jesse Ventura if he's living in Mexico. And there are some good Americans who are saying, I'm going to leave the country. That's how much they're disturbed about what's happening. People like Roscoe Bartlett are saying, I love America, but if there is an electromagnetic pulse or any kind of terrorist attack that harms, say, our power grid, well, if New York City or Washington, D.C. loses power not for 6 hours or for 6 days, but for 6 weeks, we're talking about chaos and looting and violence and death on an unimaginable scale in America. So if Roscoe Bartlett became the target of the FBI or any local, state, or federal law enforcement agency, they're going to find him, okay? They're going to find me, they're going to find you. It takes an unbelievable pro to be able to elude law enforcement with all of the digital footprints that we leave behind, not to mention real footprints, etc. But if you want to be in a situation where if chaos breaks out in a major city, then you've got to be out a little bit. You have to be prepared. And so I close this segment with a word of encouragement to you, and perhaps warning. There is a proverb in the Bible that says, the wise man sees danger approaching and prepares for it. The fool passes on and suffers for it. Our team, part of them living in West Virginia, recently endured punishing snow, as did many people in America. Well, when the folks in over 2 million homes lost power, just from the ice storm and the snowstorm that hit, they knew that it was coming, all right? Did they do something to prepare, like, say, fill their bathtub with water so that they could flush the toilet if the electricity went out and they were on a well and their pump wouldn't work? Did they fill up jugs of water so they could have drinking water? Did they have candles ready, flashlights ready? Did they have a portable radio with batteries so that they could get the news? I mean, these are simple little things. And if you saw the footage of some of the Krogers and other major supermarkets where the shelves were literally wiped clean of all food because people knew, oh my goodness, this storm is coming, I've got to be ready. Well, maybe it would behoove us to have enough food around, toilet paper around, drinking water around, to be able to survive for, say, a few days or a couple weeks, should something catastrophic happen that's either a natural event or a man-made event. It's just food for thought. So whether you're Jesse Ventura, living off the grid outside the country, or Roscoe Bartlett, living off the grid inside of the country, I'm certain that there are things that we can learn from these men, and certain that there are ways that we can be prepared. It's only prudence. This is the voice of resistance. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes? and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. We recently discussed on this program how that Hollywood is responding to its love of the dollar by creating and producing more family-friendly films, films with a subtle or even overtly religious theme, and people, they're ponying up the money. They're going to see them. And the concept that sex sells is actually statistically not true. The movies that are doing the best at the box office are the ones that people can take their children to, that have an uplifting story, and oftentimes a theocentric story. Well, I can't think of a more theocentric story than Noah. Yes, and in case you did not know, Russell Crowe stars in the upcoming $125 million film titled simply Noah. Now, there is a Christian organization, and you might know about them, Faith Driven Consumer, who polled its online audience. And by the way, when you poll an online audience, it's not a true poll, all right? But 98% of the people responded to this question. As a faith-driven consumer, are you satisfied with a biblically themed movie designed to appeal to you, which replaces the Bible's core message with one created by Hollywood? Are you satisfied with that? And of course, 98% of the people said no. Now you'll note that the question itself doesn't even have the film Noah mentioned in it. The film Noah is mentioned above the question. And there are some rumors out there that the actor Noah, Russell Crowe, that Noah is kind of off balance and he's concerned about global issues or population issues. So there is this potential, I haven't seen the movie, it's not out yet, that they're trying to impart some of the modern day left-wing concerns into Noah's character, all right? Noah's not concerned about global sinning. He's not even concerned about global warming. He's concerned about global wetting. Bada boom. Anyway, so we'll have to see. But the Paramount Theater actually polled people repeatedly. Paramount fired back, and there was some pretty hot exchanges in the press, pretty angry exchanges, where Paramount said, look, this is not word for word out of the scriptures, but we're trying to base it on the life of Noah, and we've got incredible special effects, and we're not trying to be offensive. We polled Christian viewers and Christian organizations and had them in study groups and showed them clips of the film repeatedly, and they actually went against the director's wishes at points to try and perhaps sync it up a little bit more with the scriptures. I'm not sure how the film is going to be, but I can tell you this, I'm going to go see it. And I'll let you know. And maybe you'll want to go see it. As I've said before, you can't fight something with nothing. And there might be a filmmaker watching this show right now. You don't know you're a filmmaker yet, but you could become one. And you could introduce a film that stuck a little more closely to the biblical theme. And then you can...